Welcome to Health and Wellness, where we offer integrated solutions for personal and financial retirement planning for medical professionals. I'm your host, Michael Swartz. All right. Well, Jennifer, welcome to the Health and Wellness podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a real quick bit of your background. 54-year-old MD, working in pediatrics and maybe about 2 to 3 years out from your formal retirement date. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the way I think about it, though, is it's 2 to 3 years out from my formal retirement from my traditional pediatrics practice,
Okay.
which, you know what I mean? Which is sort of like the heavy kind of retirement, leaving medicine. Um, but as I'm sure we'll talk about, that part of my retirement will be continuing working in some capacity because I don't think I'll ever stop.
Yeah, and I think that's probably
Yeah.
going to be one of the themes that we hit on,
Yeah.
is, with this whole health and wellness mindset, retirement is not just a clean ending. It's not
Right.
working, stop, moving on. There's a massive transition that takes place over several years and in many different steps.
Yes. I love that
Wonderful.
I love the way you describe that.
Yeah, and really trying to share the whole idea of the retirement journey, that there's really three phases to this 10 to 15 year transition that centers on the day you retire, but has a period of retiring before the day you retire, and certainly a transition into retirement as well. And
Hmm.
not making it this retirement cliff that we talk about, where you're working up to the day you retire, running, sprinting through the finish line, and then it's this guillotine that just truncates your professional career and leaves you with very little on the other side. It sounds like you've got some things in place that we'll certainly talk about to make that a much more manageable transition.
Yeah. Yeah. And interesting, I feel like as I've gone through my career, I've had several kind of mini retirements along the way, in a way. Not that, whether they're just endings and new beginnings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really good transition into sharing a bit about your career. So let's start by looking back, kind of what's led you to this point in your professional and practicing medicine.
Yeah.
Share a bit about your career.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how detailed you want me to get, but I can say that traditional kind of childhood led me to becoming a doctor. Uh, Actually became a doctor not so much as a great desire of I always wanted to be a doctor. It was more of I really like science and biology, and here I am in college, and what else can I do with that kind of degree? You just sort of become a doctor. I'm good at school. Let me take the MCAT, see how it goes. So I became a doctor, and I have no regrets, but it wasn't really this like intentional, thought out, long desired thing. Um, so I chose pediatrics after medicine in almost a similar way. I really enjoyed almost every rotation I went through and was really deciding between OB and pediatrics to the point that I was like, I'm just going to apply to both and whatever I get into. I do. And then at the last second, I said, I have to be crazy to choose a career that's by nature 24/7 if there's anything else I like equally, right? So I was like, forget the OB. I'm going peds. And then I really went all in pediatrics. I stayed academic for quite a while, working in the hospital setting, and then I transitioned into private practice. But what happens to me throughout my career is I tend to get like the itch. Once things
Okay.
become routine and um, regular, which it's funny because my husband loves that sort of steady, here I am type of pace. I get like, okay, what's my new project? What's my new thing I'm going to learn? And so I went from general pediatrics to I became a breastfeeding specialist and built a breastfeeding side practice and then kind of rolled it into my practice. I actually did like a house call business for a little while, decided I was going to be a stay-at-home mom for a while, quit my job, pendulum swung way too far the other way. I was bored after, After a few weeks, I'm like, this is just not for me. So, um, I was very lucky to have a father-in-law who was a pediatrician. He was I mean, his practice was not near my house. It was probably an hour away, but he said, why don't you, while you figure out what you want to do, just come work for me once a week. Just keep your
Yeah.
experience there. So I did. I started working for him and I was like, huh, this sort of I hadn't been in the really like own seeing what it was like to own a small this was like a country small type of practice, and it was really kind of cool, those relationships, the stuff that's so special about pediatrics, building those relationships. And as I started doing it, then I called one of my friends from residency who was still in that hospital setting of, that you get stuck in there, you get brainwashed. That's all there
Yeah.
is. There's nothing on the outside. I said, come do this once a week. Just see, just try it. So she
Yeah.
started coming once a week, and over time, he retired. That was his retirement plan. He slowly retired, and we took over the practice, and we built it up from this tiny little practice to a massive, massive practice that now I am thinking about what's my exit strategy? Who am I building as my next? I've been working really hard on trying to develop the next generation in my company.
Wonderful. So it certainly wasn't a linear path. I mean, let's start
No.
there. It was certainly not linear, and it was a smorgasbord of choices for you along this nonlinear path. It sounds like it was quite the experience.
Yeah. And always, and even throughout the journey of building that practice, I think a part of my heart was always my dad was more in the business world. There were no doctors in my family. I think my heart was more of business than
Sure.
healthcare. So I was always, doing these side kind of business and enjoyed running the practice. Our practice merged into a larger group, and I became very active in the leadership of the larger company because I really enjoyed the strategic thinking and the planning and the, getting involved with how can we get ready for the future with we were ahead of the curve on telemedicine and things like that.
Well, I
Always.
mean, it's a very strong perspective to have now applied back to kind of this next stage of your career. You've got the strategic mindset for identifying successors, potentially selling out or finding people to take over the roles and responsibilities that you have, and really how that informs your personal and professional retirement too. It sounds like you've got quite a strong background to help you navigate this transition.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I'm my weaknesses, I think, when it comes to this transition, I do have a very strong network of people around me and experiences in my pocket and things like that. But I have a lot of um, baggage, so to speak, around the mindset of money
Okay.
and the fear of not continuing to earn. Uh, I am a child of a family who was what's the word? Depression era family.
Yeah.
My grandmother who used to pour a little sweet and low and then wrap up the thing and save that kind of thing. It's hard for me to spend money, and it's hard for me to have that confidence that it'll be there. I always ask myself, what would I do if I didn't need money? Right? What would I do if I didn't need money? That's how I think about it. And I'm somewhat doing what I would do, but not completely because I'm afraid to get rid of.
That that's a very real issue facing the retiring physician is nearing the end of the career and saying it's so consistently proven over time that when I show up for work, I get my paycheck and that comes in twice a month, 26 times a year. And at
Hmm.
retirement, that materially goes away. And I mean, what we've talked about in the 1920s and 30s, it really is Great Depression. This is just 100 years ago, and really 2 to 3 generations. So you are raised by the children who grew up in that mindset and that family,
Hmm.
right? And it is going away a little bit, but that scarcity mindset really does track through into today. And so when you see physicians in their later 50s, early 60s, that generational gap isn't far enough away that we've forgotten,
Yeah.
the Depression era, the dirt floor poor. It's very recent. It's within our lineage, still close enough that it has an
Yeah.
influence on our mindset.
Yeah, and it's actually
Absolutely.
compounded, Michael, I would say, by the fact that for doctors, talking about money is like this horrible thing. You're not supposed to talk about it or, value it. It's all about the people. And so it's really a double whammy.
Yeah, and I mean, as you know, but just for the listeners here, I mean, that's really what drew me into this is as a financial planner, I started asking the questions to write a book about the integrated retirement plan, the finances and the personal transition. And what I came to find out is that it's two different books. It's two different ideas that need to be married but separate. And of course, they come together for the physician. I've had several physicians say too, you never talk about money with the patients. That takes care of with insurance and billing, but you just talk about with the patient what their care plan, not the financial plan. And
Right.
so, even professionally, you're really conditioned to keep that as a secondary issue. It doesn't ever come to the
Yeah.
front. And that's really what this health and wellness model is to get people talking about it, to share these stories and to make it not so taboo or keep it tucked behind closed
Hmm.
doors, to bring it out into the open and say, yeah, this is affecting a lot more people than are probably sharing about it. And I appreciate you, Jennifer, sharing so openly about it and really calling it out for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I want, I could go on about this topic,
Yeah,
Michael, for,
let's dive into it. Let's dive into it because the next part of it
tell
is,
you, I
what's
have
your
this like, so my sister is in finance, so I always have that as in my pocket. Like if I have questions, and she does a lot of actually what similar to what you do, not the coaching part, but you know, planning for
financial planning?
retirement and
Yeah.
financial planning. And um, for me, I always say, well, she would say, she'll always say to me, well, if you know how long you're going to live, then I can tell you how much money you need, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that piece, and then I don't have this. I know a lot of people want to leave money, tons of money around for their kids. And, I don't mind. I would like to leave something, but I don't want trust fund children. I don't need to like save it all up. So I read this book called, I think it was called Die with
Die with
Zero.
zero.
Die
Yeah.
with Zero, right?
Yeah.
I can't. I want to be able to embrace those concepts. Like having a hard time, figuring out how to um, be sure I have enough and also want to, what I'd love more than anything is to be able to get my husband. My husband doesn't like his job. I actually like my job, so I'm
Okay.
not anxious to fully retire. I am anxious to make a transition and plan my next step towards full retirement, but I want to be able to retire him.
Yeah. Yeah. And really that's a very powerful gift that physicians can give to their spouse. And actually earlier this year, we did have a nursing spouse who was able to retire in his mid 50s, and the physician spouse continues to work, carry the benefits. And he had enough to save for his income, but not enough to save for both of their incomes, right? So
Hmm.
she continues working. He's able to retire. It's a wonderful gift to give, especially if you kind of have a transitioning out plan instead of this dead end or final, the finality of retirement. Take that away and turn it into more of a transition. And so, specifically, do you have a retirement plan right now for finances?
Hmm.
And you've shared a bit about this, but I'd love to hear it from you. What is your financial retirement plan as it
Yeah.
stands today for you?
Sure. So, on the practical level, my retirement plan is my husband and I have a financial advisor through Fidelity who we work with. And we have our, quarterly or twice a year meetings with him where he does okay, well, if you make this, it goes through the whole thing. And if you were, and that what stress tests our plan. So we're at the point right now where my husband has cut down to 4 days a week. He's also a physician. So he's cut down to 4 days a week. It's nice because he's in radiology and it's not really the patients don't care who they see. It's just the work
Sure.
needs to get done. So it's much easier for him to kind of take off here or there than it is when you have direct patient responsibilities. But so he cut down to 4, and we're good at that. And then the plan is for him now to move to 3 and we have a lot of things coming up. We have a college and then probably, other things one still has to go to college. And then I think another one is going to go to grad school that do we want to help pay for that? I kind of before we fully make our dead on retirement plan, kind of want to know what children to financial requirements are ahead of us.
Yeah, that again, it's a very real issue that I'm sure several listeners are going to go, yeah, me too, right? They're
Yeah.
raising their hand behind the computer screen or behind the phone screen right now as they're driving to work, going, I need to worry about those things too, right? It's the first home purchase, it's the first vehicle purchase, it's the college education on their
Yeah.
children and navigating that. And so for
Hmm.
you do have, I guess, for your financial plan, some very tangible goals that you're looking to achieve, and that does have an influence to some degree on your professional timeline and transition. Is that a good review?
For sure. For sure.
Wonderful. And so I guess the key takeaway here is for the listeners, especially those physicians, in their years of retiring, kind of the last decade of their career, having some true dollars and cents assigned to some of these goals to help inform that timeline. I mean, has that been helpful for you?
Yes. It's helpful for me to see when they put the numbers in that program. I don't
Yep.
remember what it is, but I'm sure that you do it exactly with all of your clients. They put it in and then they say, okay, your monthly expenses are this, and this is how much you're going to get from your, investments. And then stress testing it. Okay, what if we're conservative? What if we're aggressive? And it really running through every scenario gives me a lot more confidence. Like without that, I'd think we'd have to work forever.
Yeah.
And this is giving me the comfort that we can make this work. Now we just have to figure out, what, like he could, if he quit tomorrow, we could probably figure out, like I could work a little bit harder. We could figure out, but he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do yet with all of his free time, right? So I don't want him to be all bored and
Yeah.
so I think like the slowing down and then building up the hobbies and the things makes more sense.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to our last question here, the first of three episodes, which is, what is your personal retirement plan, that transition for you? And you mentioned your husband too, because yeah, that retirement cliff where it's just work, 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 sprint through the finish line,
Yeah.
get to the day you retire, and then to have that all go away overnight, that
Yeah.
framework and that purpose, those relationships. Now you mentioned, the longitudinal relationship of patients
Yeah.
has an impact with radiology versus peds, but that personal retirement and transition plan, what does that look like for you? And how does that
Hmm.
motivate your career timeline?
Yeah. I want to continue with my direct patient care while for a little bit longer. I don't have an exact timeline on what that is, but I want to continue my side. I work in the wellness space, so I'm the chief wellness officer of my company, and I really enjoy working upstream of the healthcare system. The things on an system level that we can do to improve healthcare for physicians, as well as working one-on-one with the physicians on their own well-being. That's a little bit where my passion is now. A little bit, so doing a little bit more with work with that, which I could do, that would help me extend my working years because to me that's a new initiative. When I take on a new project, and then I could make, I won't make as much money as I would seeing patients, but it's enough that that I think that that's kind of my launch. That's my step down,
The bridge. Yeah,
my
the
bridge.
the
Yeah.
bridge between, you mentioned, practice and seeing patients and
Yeah.
still having that forward thinking. And for those of you guys listening, not able to see the video, Jennifer, your eyes got very wide and you got very excited when you started thinking about that forward focus.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch. You're very animated, very excited about
That's the
that.
coach in you, Michael. I love it.
Well, yeah, just so the listeners know, our relationship began, we became physician development coaches together. Obviously, you as the chief wellness officer and me coming on a total, 90-degree trajectory from the financial side. But what brought us together is just that personal passion for helping the physicians and
Yeah.
staying out ahead of these problems and having, this retirement transition at least revealed to me through the interview process. And it's something that not a lot of people are talking about. And, when you look at it from your side, how many healthcare systems and practices have a chief wellness officer? It can't be many. It
Yeah.
can't be a
There's not.
majority.
No, not
And
too
so,
many. Yeah.
everyone's looking at the bottom line in the finances. I think we've been well conditioned to worry about that, but
Hmm.
who's worried about the wellness of the physicians in practice? And, from your perspective as a chief wellness officer, and then from mine as as a financial planner, who's worried about the physicians as they transition out of their career?
Right.
And who's helping create that bridge. And so for
Yeah.
you to have that purpose as, sole focus on chief wellness officer roles and duties is a very meaningful way to preserve those relationships, at least with your colleagues,
Yeah.
and take your talents and reinvest them, throughout this transition. It's something most people don't have, is kind of that intermediate step between
Yeah.
practice and retirement.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's funny that what you just said, the uh, working with the physicians to help that journey is something I actually plan to do at my company next year.
Well,
Helping, because there are quite a few people who are looking to retire, and to help
right.
them with that succession planning and their phasing out. I love doing that.
Well, as we close out here on our first episode, just to do a quick kind of review and synopsis, being in pediatrics and your transition now into leadership within the practice that you're in now, kind of the whole review of your career, I guess in one word, if you could say, looking back on your career was blank, what would you say?
Ooh, that's tough. My career was rewarding.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I like that. And so as you're looking ahead at this transition into you're stair stepping down into retirement, your retirement plan, this kind of idea of integrating the personal and financial, your integrated retirement plan is blank. Looking ahead.
Scary. I gotta
Thank
be
you for being
honest.
so honest. Thank you.
I am not ready for, because the mindset around retirement to me, it just feels like this, like, okay, now I'm just waiting around to die. I can't wrap my head around that.
Well, I will have to send your interview to all future interviewees because there's there's a genuine authenticity there, Jennifer, that many people would probably shy away from, and you're just calling it out. And it's going to be such a breath of fresh air for so many people to hear that. It is scary. It feels like the end, and then the next end is the end. And
Right.
so this really does kind of pull back the curtain on what the real fears and concerns are. And really, without being informed and without us having these conversations in public, people don't really know if this is something their colleagues are sharing or going through or
Hmm.
transitioning into.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this in future personal retirement plans, but the outcomes of an ineffective transition are the big D's of retirement: divorce, depression, dependency, and death. And so
Oh.
it is scary. It
Hmm.
is. There's a massive emotion, and so thank you for calling it out for exactly what it is.
And you didn't even prep me.
No, no, those are two that I'd like to get live because it is. It's an authentic response there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, Jennifer. Thank you for our time together in this first interview. We've got your background and we've kind of set the stage now to dive a little bit deeper into retiring professionally and then retiring personally. So thank you again. And we'll reconnect in episode 2 then, with more conversation about your professional transition and go a little bit more into detail with that.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. That concludes our interview with Dr. Jennifer Shaer, a Chief Wellness Officer and Pediatric Specialist at Allied Physicians Group. If you would like to learn more about her coaching practice, you can find her at shaercoaching.com. That's www.shaercoaching.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Health and Wellness. As always, I'm your host, Michael Swartz, certified financial planner and healthcare peer coaching practitioner. If you're looking for more help or additional resources on your retirement journey, please visit healthwellness.com or send an email to hello@healthwellness.com. We'll see you in the next episode.